This is a laser sight. It's small, inexpensive, and when it's turned on, it accurately produces a red dot. So just by securing it to a cue, it can precisely tell you exactly where you're aiming by projecting a small target onto the object ball. But does this actually work? The concept of using light to show you exactly where to aim has been around for some time now, with the use of specially constructed laser cues and over-table projectors. But sometimes this meant you couldn't use your own cue, and in any case it was always really expensive. But this one attaches to the end of my own cue, and it in fact costs less than £10. So how exactly does it work? Well, in a lot of ways, it couldn't be any more simple. After securing it to your cue, you simply turn it on, and that projects a red dot onto the object ball. Some calibration is required to align it at the right height, but once you've done that, you've got a target on the object ball, which you just need to hit. And if it doesn't seem to be aligned perfectly, then it doesn't really matter because it can be easily adjusted. With these two little screw holes, you can adjust the position of the target until it's aligned perfectly. And once you've got everything lined up nicely, it means you can see, first of all, exactly where you're going to hit the red. And secondly, you can see how straight your cueing is by looking at how much the dot moves when you deliver the cue. And you should be able to find out even more after you've played the shot. On a straight shot, you can even see how accurately you aimed it by working out if the little dot is on the back of the pocket. But on an angled shot, there's more of a problem. Because unlike more expensive technology, this cheap little device doesn't come with a computer. So this thing will show you exactly where you're aiming, but the problem is it's not going to work out the angles for you. And that might cause you to miss. Because if you're new to cue sports, you probably won't be aware that if you aim for a point on the object ball that's directly in line with the pocket, you won't end up potting the ball because this doesn't allow space for the cue ball. So in order to cut this red in, I need to get this cue ball where that cue ball is. Now, snooker players automatically allow for this, but this does mean it's a limitation of the device, that it won't do it for you. But of course this costs less than the cue chalk I'm using, so I'm not expecting anything fancy. And another limitation that should have been obvious but I didn't think of is side spin. Because if I want to play this shot up for the blue, you can see the dot is aiming about a good ball and a half wide of this red because I'm playing it with side spin. And you automatically assume it will work it out for you, but of course it won't. Then you've got the more obvious problem that this thing is actually attached to your cue and it might hit your hand or your head. This has actually been less of a problem than I thought it was going to be, because I thought I was going to have to play shots literally with my head off the cue to be able to play it. But it's getting in the way less than I thought, but it's still a bit of a problem. I've actually bashed my hand with it a couple of times, which hurt quite a bit. But what if we just use it for what it seems to be for, practicing lining up and playing straight shots? Aiming for a precise point on the object ball like the dot makes is how I try to aim every shot. And if the dot's in the right place, then that should mean I'm on line with the shot and I'm playing it exactly how I intended. So it seems to work with straighter shots, but would it work if you were playing a normal game? Because this means playing a lot of different types of shot, and not all of them are going to be straight. Well, not really, because although you can work the angles out on the straighter shots, when you get a thinner shot, or a shot with side, like we've already discussed, the dot won't be on target with the object ball even slightly. So on most shots, it isn't actually going to help. However, if you have some mirrors, there is something else we can do with it that's quite fascinating. But first we're just going to find Bob from Sandomierz, Poland, which is roughly there. This is a cheaper way of doing a trick we saw with a table projector earlier, just by putting a mirror on a cushion. If I use mirrors like this, perfectly adjacent to the cushions, I can see, for example, in this mirror, the laser beam going into that mirror, hitting this mirror, and actually can see it hitting the red over there. And as long as I line it up right and hit the cue ball roughly in the middle, that should mean that the cue ball's going to come off that mirror, or rather that cushion, and hit the red exactly where I was aiming. This isn't as hard to set up as you might think. You just need to get the mirrors in the right place, and you can automatically find the target with a laser. Of course, this still requires you to play the shot in the right direction, and if you put any unwanted side spin on the ball, then you're not going to hit the target. However, it's still something else you can do other than play straight shots. So there we go, the laser sight won't help you line up an angled shot, but when it comes to testing your straight cueing, it seems like it does a lot better. Except the problem is, it doesn't. Again, this is a really cheap product, and at this price point I wasn't expecting too much from it. But honestly, it's got to be the worst product I've ever tested, because to start off with, if you accidentally rock the cue one way or the other by just twisting your wrist a little bit, it changes by a long way where you're actually aiming. And then there's the aiming itself, which is harder than you would think. And even if you manage to keep your wrist completely still during the shot, there's no guarantee you'll bring your cue in at the right angle in the first place. And even if you bring it in, within a millimetre, that little dot is still going to be miles off where it should be. Meaning, if you actually hit the dot, the chances of you actually potting the ball are pretty low. Normally if I was playing these types of shots, I'd expect to get roughly 50-50, but with the laser sight it dropped to about 1 in 10, and I wasn't even getting close with some of these shots. The problem is, this seems to be the budget version of a cue sight that projects a straight line to aim with. This would definitely be easier to line up, but again, if you rotate the cue intentionally or otherwise, it's still going to move the target. But this isn't just a cheap knockoff, because even though these are being sold specifically as Cue Sport laser sights, they're something else entirely. When this first arrived and I tried to attach it to my cue, I quickly realised that I couldn't. It was way too narrow to even fit on at the tip end, and the mounts weren't going to help in any way at all. Meaning this is definitely a rifle sight that was supposed to be sold with a post mount so it would fit a cue, but they even got that wrong. Because this came with a rail mount that needs to be screwed to something, and my cue doesn't have any screw holes. But as luck would have it, for a previous video, mostly as a joke, I blue tacked this rifle sight to the end of my cue. I thought there was a chance the mounts from this would help me out, and as it turns out they did, with a bit of modification. I had to actually saw the ends off here to be able to fit this around the laser sight, which just about allowed me to bolt it on, allowing the cue to go through here. But we'll get to that after we find Luke, who's from Alice Springs in Australia, which is right in the middle there. So what we've actually got here is the cheapest aftermarket firearm sight you can actually buy. It's being sold all across the internet, and it is just a gun sight that's being photoshopped on the end of cues. And to make matters worse, they are using photos of actual cue sight products to try to con people into buying them. And unfortunately in my case, it might have actually worked. And it comes with no way of attaching it to a cue of any kind. It's by sheer coincidence I happen to have the parts that I could crudely hack it together with. After sawing the ends off that other rail mount, I just about managed to create something that would bolt together, but the chances of finding something like this are low. And to make matters worse, even if this product was exactly what it was meant to be, it still wouldn't be any good. You see, the problem is just rotating your cue a tiny bit makes a huge difference, even if it was a vertical line. And you'd have to have it at that height, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see over the cue ball. So there's just no way this thing is ever going to be accurate enough. And then there's the fact that it's just attached to your cue, and I'm not even talking about it getting in the way. I just mean how bad it actually feels. Having it on the cue makes every shot feel horrible, and you may have noticed the battery's now run out, and I don't in fact have another one. And did I mention, of course, this heap of junk doesn't come with batteries, and it doesn't take regular batteries. The batteries cost £10. So please avoid buying this or anything like it, because it really won't help your game in any way. But if you do really want to improve how well you sight the shot, then there are things you can do about it. Things that actually work. Which is where this video comes in, because it shows you how to accurately line up a shot. And if you want to use lasers in a way that actually helps your game and helps you aim, then have a look at this video I made a few years ago. And remember, don't just watch play, and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.